Hi, my name is Stephen Lulich. This is the Lulich Corner, brought to you by Lulich Attorneys. And today we have with us Denise Boehning with CoastalWide LLC. So your business deals with floodplains, right?
Yes, I predominantly do floodplain management. I am a certified floodplain manager and an associate in the National Flood Insurance Program. And our number one priority is the safety of our community's residents and their properties.
Okay, so I'd like to get real basic here,
Okay.
just so we start off.
Yep.
And so what is a floodplain and how do you know if you're in a floodplain?
Floodplain, what I like to say, we live in Florida. If you want to know what flood zone you are in or whether your property can be flooded, look on your driver's license. If it says Florida, you're in a floodplain. Flood happens. We here in Florida, we're surrounded by water. So flooding can occur at any time.
Okay, so there's floodplains are numbered somehow?
Floodplains are numbered in terms of there's a flood map, which we have here in Indian River County. And that flood map will show you whether you are in a flood zone, whether you're not in a flood zone, what type of flood zone you are, because there's various kinds. And based on that, if, for example, you purchase a property, um, the bank will decide whether you require flood insurance or not.
Okay, and so correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
because I think I've done a little bit of real estate here at
Yeah,
Lulich
I
Attorneys.
think so, right?
And a lot of your surveys, they'll post on a survey what flood zone you're in.
Correct.
Okay, so if you really want to know what flood zone you're in, you can have a survey done. So just I don't know if it's done on a practical basis how they come up with flood zones, but you would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I got a house on the water, I might be in more of a floodplain than if I have one inland, or it doesn't make a difference.
It depends.
Okay.
The way they come up with the flood zones is FEMA will use historical data. They'll use data, rain events, storm events. They will use modeling to determine the chance of a flood event occurring at that specific property. And now note, the flood maps will only show you the 1% chance of flood waters reaching a particular level at that particular place at any one point in time. They will not show you storm surge, hurricanes, and things like that.
Okay. So in general, there's people in flood zone 1, flood zone 2, 3, 4, right? They're numbered with regard to the potential severity of the flooding.
Correct. But for example, a lot of people think, oh, well, I don't live by the beach. So if I live on the beach side, right on the ocean side, my house is more prone to flooding than, let's say, a person who lives right off of 4th Street by the canal. Well, that's not so necessarily the truth, because if you live by the beach, a lot of times you have dunes. These dunes protect the storm surge, the waters from reaching your home, while people who live by the canals, like I do, we don't have dunes. So we are
The water just rises.
The water just rises.
And even when you're inland, if with the flooding of actually rain itself,
that's right,
you can have the rivers rising.
Absolutely. And that's what a flood event is the rising water that can penetrate your home and really cause some severe damage. And that is not insured on your homeowner's insurance.
And that's interesting. So, for instance, those people in Arcadia, okay, the big storm came through last year, and Arcadia must be what, 40 miles inland? Okay, and everything flooded, the rivers came up, there was damage all over the place, 40 miles inland.
That's right. That's right. Those are things you cannot predict, and it can happen at any time. I was just on a call just a week ago with FEMA where we got some statistics on the most recent flood events in Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale received in those 3 days 800 billion gallons of water. So can you imagine a Olympic-sized pool carries 500,000 gallons of water, I think, something of that sort. So just imagine how many Olympic-sized pools were filled by all this rainwater. And this is something nobody could predict. It can happen anywhere. it was just a regular rain event.
Yeah, and I actually, the first time I came to Florida some 40 years ago,
Yeah.
I stayed in Fort Lauderdale, and it was in a neighborhood where they had the driveways that had, I guess, a culvert wasn't there. There was a dip in the driveway, so if it got flooded, and I was just arriving in town. There weren't enough parking spaces, so I drove in the driveway.
Yeah.
And it rained all night. When I came out in the morning, there was water up to the back seat of my car.
I believe it. Yeah.
Just a little flood.
Yeah, just a little.
How interesting. So can anybody buy flood insurance?
Absolutely. Flood insurance is available to anybody, everybody in the state of Florida, provided your community participates in the National Flood Insurance Program. And in the state of Florida, pretty much every community, I think there's maybe one or two communities.
You're talking about townships, cities,
yeah.
counties.
Everybody. If your community, Indian River
You're not
County.
talking about Sebastian Highlands. You're talking about
everybody.
Governmental communities.
Yes, Indian River County, all Orlando, Palm Beach, Miami, Broward County, all of them participate in the National Flood Insurance Program.
Okay.
So for them, for each person resident, flood insurance is available.
So are there any people that have no choice? They have to buy flood insurance?
Yes. If you purchase a home and your home happens to be in a flood zone, and you have a mortgage, your lender will require you to purchase flood insurance.
No insurance, no money.
That's right.
That's
right.
That's easy to understand.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
And so, of course, one of the things that banks require when you're going to get a mortgage is a survey of your property, and
That's
there's
right.
where the zone is established.
That's right. They will look at the flood map to determine whether or not you're in a flood zone, which would then provide you the requirement to purchase flood insurance.
And so originally when you started talking, you talked about your company doing floodplain management. What is that?
What we do is we help communities such as Indian River County, all over the state of Florida, to manage their floodplain. For example, I work a lot with one of the local communities in their construction business. So any new construction that happens in a flood zone, I help the community to verify and document that they follow the National Flood Insurance Program rules, the local flood ordinance, to keep the residents safe from flooding just in case. For example, let's say you have a house that is in a flood zone and you decide to put in a generator, and your finished floor of your house is prone to flooding, and you decide you want to get a generator just in case, and now you don't elevate your generator. Why? Your generator is going to be useless in case of a flood.
If it's underwater, yeah.
If it's underwater, so why bother
work.
getting it? So
Right.
I help communities, I advise them or consult with them saying, elevate the generator pad like that. You're
The
protected.
Generacs, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So things like that.
Good. So you work with developers then?
I work directly with the community, usually the building department, the building officials. I work with them.
Okay. With regard to the legislation and codes they require to protect against flooding.
Exactly. Yes. I make sure that they follow the rules because certain construction in certain areas require different rules. For example, most people who live by the beach know of the coastal construction control line. So there are certain construction standards that they have to follow that I can advise them on.
Okay. So, for instance, we have things like storm mitigation that we do to reduce our insurance policies
Right.
with regard to making sure there's proper anchors in the attic and things of that nature,
Sure.
storm doors or
Correct.
windows or shutters, etc., which
Right.
reduce the insurance premium. Is there anything like that in flood insurance?
Absolutely. Every community that participates in the National Flood Insurance Program is required to abide by certain minimum standards. And these minimum standards allow the residents to purchase flood insurance. But every community also is afforded the ability to participate what they call the Community Rating System program. This is a program where a community enforces higher standards, and these higher standards translate into points. These points allow a community to get discounts for their residents on their flood insurance policies. For example, Indian River County is a Class 5 community, so every single resident gets 25% discount on their flood insurance premium. Town of Indian River Shores is a Class 6. They get a 20% discount. City of Sebastian is a Class 6, 20% discount. City of Vero Beach is currently a Class 7. They get a 15% discount.
So how do they charge you? Can you go anywhere and get flood insurance?
Yeah, sure.
So any insurance company gives out flood insurance.
Any insurance company will give out flood insurance. What I always recommend, I'm also a licensed flood insurance agent, is make sure that you review your deck page and you go with an insurance agent who understands flood insurance, because flood insurance is a totally different animal than homeowners insurance, car insurance, or commercial insurance. Flood insurance is rated differently, it is looked differently, and errors can easily creep in.
Okay, so there's a difference between wind damage,
Yes.
which doesn't include flood insurance.
Correct.
And rain damage, okay, and actual rising tide.
Correct. Yes. Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so is flood insurance expensive?
Sorry, I'm laughing. Yes, it is. It unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know which way you want to look at it. Risk Rating 2.0 just recently came out, which is a totally new way of rating flood insurance. Because in the past, flood insurance was based solely on the map. If you were in a flood zone, you were rated this way. If you were out of a flood zone, your flood insurance premium was about $500 a year, regardless of how big, how small your house was. So with all the debt that the NFIP has, they decided that, you know what, it is not fair for a home that's only worth $100,000 to pay $500 a year for their flood insurance, while $1 million home pays the same amount.
I was going to say, I thought it was $500.
Yeah, it's changed.
So it's based upon value.
Now it's based on what they do is they determine the distance to a flooding source. Then they'll determine the replacement cost value of your home. And then they'll put in other factors, also prior flooding, flood events, things
Risk
like that,
factors.
other risk factors to determine your rate. And then after that, they'll
And
take
so
out your
this
discount.
changed recently?
This changed April last year.
Okay.
And some of us, for example, I usually use my own house as an example. I'm in a zone X, which is not a low to moderate flood hazard area. So my policy in the past was $500 a year. Now with Risk Rating 2.0, where they take into account my replacement cost value and the distance to the flooding source, my rate is increasing every year by about, 18%, until such time it is what they call truly risk rated, which probably is going to be around $1,600 a year.
Wow, that's nice. So they're going to work you up to it.
They're going to work you up to it. They're not going to, unless it's a brand new policy. For example, you buy a house.
So you're not used to paying $500, so they could hit you up for more.
Right. I mean, if you buy a brand new house from somebody else, you purchase a new house and they had a flood insurance where they only, let's say, pay $800 a year. Now you come in and you buy that house and the $800 was not a truly risk-rated policy, they'll charge you $2,000.
And so with the survey, you're able to give somebody a quote on,
Yes.
Because you need a survey, right? Or
Not
you
necessarily.
You can look it up on the plat or, or a
No.
map. There's
You
a
can
map.
look on the map to see what flood zone you're in, but for flood insurance purposes, an elevation certificate is no longer required.
Okay, so CoastalWide, you not only help developers and counties and governments and cities, communities,
Yes,
but you also help individual in the purchasing
correct.
of flood insurance.
Yes.
Okay, and so where can someone reach you? What's your phone number?
My phone number is 772-532-4536, and my email is Denise at coastalwide.com.
CoastalWide.com. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
And so I know we've gone over a lot of
Yeah.
things. I don't know if we mention anything or forget to mention some things. So is there something you would like to add that maybe we haven't covered?
No, I don't think so, but I think the most important is we try to keep our community safe from flooding, because flooding can happen at any time, anywhere. It does not have to be associated with any hurricane events. And the best way to protect yourself is good floodplain management through your community. Get flood insurance. There's ways you can work with your flood insurance agent to get a proper rate to be safe.
And that's great. So call Denise. Okay, what's your number again?
772-532-4536.
Denise, thank you very much on behalf of Lulich Attorneys being at the Lulich Corner. You have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.